coordinator and the weddings, do you think that with the limit of 200 guests, that will, that council has put on the events at the park, would that squash their ability to, feel like they can have a wedding large enough to cover costs?
Yeah, I mean, that's speculative on our part, since that is, we're not professionals in that area, but that's where, it's part of the RFP,
Okay.
because that would be, to me, would be reflected in how they would propose their costs.
Because the reason we put that limit on there for events was to mitigate traffic.
Yeah.
Okay, but if we implement ballet and, we have a professional coordinator managing it, I mean, how many participants could there be? I know that Jenny's Pavilion has a limit of
Right.
180? Is it 180? So by virtue,
Right.
you can't have a big party in there with, over 180.
Well, and that's really one of the reasons for item 12, is that we prepare a year-end report every year for the council.
Okay.
So not only on the financial, but also that provides an opportunity to get that kind of feedback, from the vendors for council to consider if they want to increase, the size of events or whatnot. But that's really something I think we need to revisit every year
Okay.
with the council.
What are your thoughts on 10 and 11?
Well, the one wedding per day, I can't imagine we would have one wedding per day for 365 days. I mean, would that be?
No,
But I think that that's
on any given day,
any
you
given
only
day.
have one, instead of one in the
Oh.
morning, one in the afternoon.
Well, I think, personally, I think if the coordinator's in the middle and you can coordinate it and there's a void time between, you can transition people out, so I mean.
Well,
Morning wedding, evening wedding sort of thing?
Right. So,
on the weekends.
yeah,
So part of the complaints have been that private weddings occupy and overwhelm the park to the detriment of Atherton residents wanting to use the park. And, would we foresee weddings both Saturday and Sunday, two a day, 4 weddings a weekend? I mean, that would seem to be pretty impactful. But again, the wedding season is not 12 months out of the year. I think if you go back through historical data, it's, what, April? May
Primarily May through October is
May.
probably the
I see.
majority.
Yeah.
yeah, and I would wonder what the demand is. I mean, if we're only talking a few weddings, if we're talking every weekend during the summer, that's one thing, but if it's only a few, I think we should monitor it.
Well, there was a chart here that said how many weddings there had been in the
I think
past.
historically, it's about 30 to 35.
30 to 35 weddings a year.
A year. So I think our odds are probably pretty low that we're gonna be booking up every weekend. And then with the yearly review,
Right.
I mean, and I think that you're right, we've kind of looked at it, and if we create another option with the house, I mean, there's the ability to spread it around, so we've got ballet.
One of the things that you see commonly done in situations like this with towns that have events that
These
are
venues,
important to them, is they'll say, you can put something in there like limited to one a day without prior approval of the town or without prior approval of the city manager. Because somebody could say, my wedding's gonna be 35 people.
Right.
And so, the
You
ability
could
to
do easy,
And
you
easy.
can easily get them in and out,
Uh-huh.
and then there could be somebody in the afternoon with another 75 people. They
Right.
don't all have to be 200 people, and they
Right.
won't be.
Right.
And I think that we should be able to review
I
that.
think there
And-
should be.
That's
We should.
reasonable.
And the more flexibility you give yourself overall,
It's a good point.
and then you track that for a period of time, and then you look, if it's not working, then we need more regulations.
Sure.
My position on this is very clear. Many times I've said, I don't want to restart weddings in the park, because the time when the weddings come is at the weekends, and they fill up every parking spot there many times. We're supposed to be providing pleasure for not just the citizens of Atherton, but other people that use the park on the weekends. And it's the weekends when they have time with the kids and everything else to enjoy the park. And you know, here we are, worrying about $80,000 a year for weddings, or whatever the number is, and we're throwing away $7,000 to $8,000 a month by not renting the house. It's not logical.
Okay, well, I think that all of that has to be taken into consideration with the parking mitigation, the traffic mitigation, and other uses in the park, so that one event doesn't become the 900-pound gorilla to the detriment of the other uses in the park.
Yeah.
So I think that, I think what you've outlined here is to go out and get an RFP. I think that's the first step.
Yeah.
And then we'll see what we can do. But we're not making any decisions
No,
right now.
what about item number 11? Is there some feedback from the council if you'd like to see blackout dates for Memorial Day, Labor Day, things like that, where weddings and other corporate type events are not allowed to be booked at the park?
Easter.
Sunday.
Easter,
Well, the Easter
Easter
egg,
egg.
Easter egg.
right.
and
Yeah,
then,
I think there probably have a couple days.
well, again, can we get some wiggle room in that?
Yeah.
Sure, you can.
At the
We could,
discretion of-
we could list the specific holiday dates and say
Mhm.
without prior approval,
Right,
then you can't have it there.
okay,
I guess, since it's really just kind of planning study here,
yeah,
and maybe putting as much flexibility in it as possible for discussion purposes, you know, where you say things like that. It makes it easier on staff to
yeah,
come back and say, look, we recommend against that because it's gonna conflict with, you know, some big event in the park or something that's, you know, important in the park. Or we would only approve this if in fact they all parked over here at the train station and they bust them in.
right.
And you see that in a lot of communities that have events like this, where they're busing them from one place to
Yeah,
another.
a little shuttle service.
So, but that would give you the opportunity to try and work through it, instead of just saying, you know, totally yes or totally no ahead of time.
I agree.
And again,
Okay,
Well,
so,
and I guess the other safeguard on that is that one of the requirements is that whatever the event is, they need to fill out an application.
Yeah.
And that application is gonna be approved by the city manager or designee. So that's where these conflicts can also be monitored.
perfect.
I think the larger the wedding, or larger the event,
Mhm.
the more we mitigate the impact on the park. It's,
Yeah.
you know, so.
We don't allow them to build a castle in our dream, like in
That's all
Big
Big
Sur.
Sur.
All right, so thank you guys. Thank you for such a well put together study session and all of the detail. Thank you. I appreciate that.
I'll
so
return
very
with that
much.
RFP for
Yeah.
the council to.
Yeah.
All right,
Almost on time.
call for a motion to adjourn. That's a 6 o'clock train.
Motion to adjourn. 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock, oh.